Hi guys, welcome to Twin Perspective. I'm Joe, and tonight I'm going to be ranking the Friday the 13th films. Full spoilers on everything Friday the 13th. To use as visual aids, I would select DVD covers, but I don't own anything past Friday the 13th Part 6, because everything past 6, in my opinion, was rubbish. It was bullocks, piles of shite. So, let's get right down to it, shall we? I'm going to include the remake as well as Freddy vs. Jason. So I have a top 12. And here we go. Number 12. Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. The worst of the bunch. The ending of this movie was insulting. The premise of the movie was absurd. The only thing good about it was the incarnation of Jason being played by Kane Hodder. But the kills weren't all that. There was no gratuitous full frontal nudity. Not as much as there should be. This is a horror film, and I have standards for horror films. But what was worse about this was the ending. Absolutely idiotic. And I actually went to the movies and saw this at the theater. Okay, number 11. Jason Goes to Hell. This is part 9 of Friday the 13th. Jason Goes to Hell. Which is exactly where this film can go. I always thought it was absolutely ridiculous that this essence was going around from person to person. We never really got Jason, and it was more like a body snatcher movie. I guess if you take it separately from the rest of the Friday 13th, maybe it warrants some higher consideration. The kills were pretty impressive, but just not me. It's just not for me, and it's not for me in this series. So that's at the bottom of the list. Another one sitting ugly at the bottom of the list at number 10. Jason X, Part 10. Yeah, anytime a series is failing, you just go ahead and put it out in space, right? Jason in space. I thought the kills were okay in this, but the incarnation of Jason was one of my least favorites. This cyborg-looking mechanical thing, whatever. Doesn't belong in the series, in my opinion. Most of them after 6 don't. Let's continue with the bottom of the list at number 9. Friday the 13th, Part 7. The New Blood. This was one of my least favorite films from the moment I saw it. It tells you how bad all the other ones are for this one to be ranked 9th. Part 7, The New Blood. You get this great actor in Kane Hodder taking over as Jason Voorhees. The look is great. And then you go toe-to-toe with the psychic or the... absolutely absurd. Hated it. The kills were non-existent, unimpressive. Not to mention the lack of anything standard in a horror film. Awful film. Okay, at number 8, we have Friday the 13th, the remake from 2009. This film was upsetting on so many levels. My expectations, maybe I shouldn't have had any. But the fact that the original Friday the 13th is based on the mother of Jason, And this one, he gets the hockey mask and everything, and then at the end, the hockey mask gets crushed, but then he ends up with it again when he comes out of the lake. It's just absurd. And I like the cast; they were okay. The effort to try to get all the drugs in it, and the nude women, and the sex scenes, and the good kills. It just left a bad taste in my mouth because it's not the Friday the 13th movie I would make. And hopefully, if they try to reboot Friday the 13th again, they get a better story, because this one just didn't work for me. Didn't feel right. Can't leave the mother out. Okay, next is number 7 on the list, the last of the horrible ones. Freddy versus Jason. Freddy versus Jason. Good concept, monster movie, mashup. Let's get the classic Jason versus the classic Freddy. You could spin the story any way you want. It's a separate entity from Friday the 13th, I feel, and therefore easier to swallow. Some of the effects were really good, and then the fight scenes were okay, but overall, still, just didn't meet my very high expectations. That's the worst of the bunch, and now we've got the top 6, which in my opinion are the 6 best. Coming in at number 6, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. I saw this at the theaters. One of the best theatrical experiences of my life. It was a really good movie. I liked it. I liked the pace of it. Loved the kills. I enjoyed a few of the characters, Reggie and his older brother. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. I enjoyed a lot about this movie. I did not like the portrayal of Tommy. And the worst part about it is when you get to the end of the film, you realize it's not Jason Voorhees after all. It's the ambulance driver. And it sucks because the entire film was just a roller coaster, especially in the theater. Everyone had a great time. And then to get that ending, to leave us so flat, just upsetting. Very upsetting. And that's why of my favorites, it's number 6. All right, let's get down to number 5. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. This is part 4 in the series. This was gonna be the last one, and maybe should have been the last one. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, Jason Voorhees. Going mano a mano with a little kid named Tommy. And Tommy gets the best of him in the end. Jason dies. The machete in the head, and then the constant slashes to the back after he was down on the ground. Pretty good film. I really enjoyed the cast. The kids, there were a lot of them there, and I didn't like almost any of them, but they were played pretty good. A ton of nudity, which is what gives this movie a decent rating for a lot of people. That and you know, it was Tom Savini, the classic makeup man, coming back. But for me, it's only at number 5. I didn't like how he had black fingernails. Yes, I'm going to be critical like that. And I don't know. I didn't think the death scene was as impressive as everybody else did. I was also probably bummed out that was supposed to be the last one, so I was probably a little upset about that. Still, a very good movie. Very good horror film, very good slasher film. And that came in at number 5. All right, we're down to the final 4. Number 4 on my list, the classic original Friday the 13th. What an amazing film. Wasn't sure who the killer was throughout the whole thing. It was even shocking when you find out who it is. A great story. The kids were good. The death scenes were classic. Those slasher scenes in the original Friday the 13th were like the pinnacle, and then everything else that came after that had to meet or exceed that, or I wouldn't like it as much. So overall, a classic film. And the reason why it sits at number 4 on my list is because I realized what a double tap was when I watched this film. So many chances the surviving girl could have put this killer out, and she didn't. She did what I like to say, a piddle farted around, and if she did not a double tap, you know, oh well, it still ended great. I love the hallucination in the end of Jason jumping out of the water. In real life, he would have probably been closer to 30 years old, so I can't say it was the real Jason jumping out of that water. It was just a hallucination, but it was a great ending. And, you know, it left it up, and I couldn't wait for the next movie to come out. I wanted to see if this kid, Jason, was going to take over in his mother's footsteps, and he certainly did. And he did that in my number 3 Friday the 13th film, Friday the 13th, Part 2. This is when Jason decides, oh yeah, killing's fun. I love the story of Jason. I love the backstory. I love the fact he's been surviving in the woods. I love the fact that he built a shed. I love the fact that he kept his mom's head. And love Jenny, who is the best surviving girl of the whole series. Jenny was always my favorite. And her boyfriend, Paul, we never find out what happened to him, so he may actually be the only surviving lead male, I say, you know, besides Tommy. But most of the guys died between 1 and 6. Part 2 was great. The reveal of Jason at the end, being the long-haired, bearded woodsman type, you know, that look was good for the time in that story. And in Part 3, the very next episode, he was completely shaven and no hair. But that was a striking look for the hockey mask. So Part 2, he wore a bag over his head. And Part 2, in my opinion, is my 3rd favorite. My 2nd favorite, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. Jason Lives. After Friday the 13th Part 5, such an enjoyable movie experience, and finding out Jason wasn't really the killer, the only way they could make up for it is to bring him back to life, and they did. And as absurd as it is that a body rotting in the ground would get up and walk around after a couple of years, it didn't bother me. It became a Frankenstein story. It became the only way to get Jason back. And it was a fun roller coaster ride. We had kids at Camp Crystal Lake for the first time ever in the series. And the actor that played Tommy was much better than the actor in Part 5. The guy in Part 5 did a good job, but I just liked Tommy in Part 6 better. I liked the dynamic of having the cops involved, and you had to worry about the kids, and then the counselors were all getting killed one by one. Great kills in the movie. And ultimately, I thought it ended very well. Drowning Jason back where he belonged in Camp Crystal Lake. Great story, great ending. My 2nd favorite in the series. And my favorite, number 1, Friday the 13th film, Friday the 13th, Part 3, in 3D. I saw this at the theater in 3D. Special effects were okay. They didn't work for the first half. By the time they're juggling fruit, it was kicking in pretty good. And then when Jason obtains the hockey mask, walks out in clear view, and shoots that harpoon gun, That harpoon came right at me in the theater. Made me jump. It had me from that point on. It doesn't take place at Crystal Lake, but it's pretty close to it, and I like the continuity from part 1 to part 2 to part 3 at this point. I didn't have a problem with it taking place in a barn. I loved the fact that all these characters had character, even though none of them were very likable. I liked the Tommy Chong and his girlfriend. But overall, I thought the kills were excellent. My favorite kill of the series, when the guy's walking on his hands and Jason splits him in two. The women were beautiful in that film, part 3. And I love how it ended. I love how she put an axe in his head and he kept coming until he hit the ground. I got this definite feeling at the end that should have been a kill shot, but it probably wasn't. And the 3D effects, they were pretty good. I liked them in the theater. I don't own the 3D version at home. The movie plays just fine without it. Directed by Steve Miner, same guy that directed part 2. And those two are my favorites. So there you have it. That is Joe's favorite Friday the 13th films, ranked right here on Twin Perspective. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 so you can get more videos like this. We are fully entrenched in Twin Peaks, and we will be covering sci-fi and horror, and we'll be delving into other TV shows as well, as long as they're cool and fun. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Twin Perspective. I'm Joe, and I'll see you in the trees. Bye.